Morning, Andrew.
Morning, how are you, Howard?
I'm fine, you, great?
Good. John, have you got that Boris stuff yet for me?
We've got online. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything yet to distribute.
Ah, right. Not a bit link.
Nothing, no.
Well, it's on our website, so let's ask John in a minute if there's a bit link for it. Then you've got it.
Okay.
But we've opened a new one called Online Events. If you go to our website, and it's under there.
Okay, but I need something that I can promote within CE, Forum, SPA, etc.
Yep. Well, you should have a bit link to that, I think. Let's find out.
Okay.
John, can you hear? Good morning, Louise. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Have you got your camera on?
No, I haven't at the moment.
Have you got any slides, PowerPoints or anything you're going to share?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. Well, you'll need to turn your screen or your camera on.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, and then you'll find that you've got a toolbar.
Yeah, I used this system actually a couple of weeks ago when I was doing some training with the Cabinet Office. So it's the green button at the bottom, isn't it? The one that says share screen.
It is. It's all over the place. Or would probably be a good idea to. Are you going to use PowerPoint itself?
I am actually, if that's okay.
No, that's fine.
Only because I haven't had time to prepare anything. So.
No, that's fine. So if you want to use that, it might just be worth us just checking that it works okay from the beginning.
Okay. Do you want me to do it now?
Yeah, if you don't mind, and then we just make sure. I mean, what I find is that sometimes you need to, the little easel at the bottom or at the top of, depends which version of PowerPoint you have. Yeah, you'll find it right down the bottom. If you push that, that should then just make it one single slide per. That's it.
There you go.
And now you're in control of it. That's fine.
Okay. Do you want me to leave it like that then?
Well, I have a personal view here. I just think that with online, it's quite nice if people can see.
Face.
Yes.
Good job. I got dressed today, then, isn't it?
I don't think people are really worried about that so much. But you see, they can see your face in a little screen, but it's quite nice if they see it on a big screen, because I do think as humans, we like a bit of eye-to-eye contact to build up a bit of trust.
Okay.
So what I would suggest, I don't know how you want to play it, but are you going to give a presentation, open it to questions? Do you want to take questions as you go along?
How many people are there? That's a fairly...
Well, we've got about 32 registered. They all pitch in at about 12 o'clock. So we normally get about 80% of the people registered attending. So it could be a smallish number.
I think probably we've got an hour, haven't we? Is there anything else to talk about?
No, it's just an hour.
Okay, so why don't we just say, let's ask questions as we go?
Okay, so people can ask questions in one of two ways. Some people don't like going on screen, so we can ask for a show of hands if anyone has a question. But some people like putting questions down through the Q&A menu that you'll see in front of you. So if you just keep your eyes on that when we get going, you'll find questions that come along.
Okay.
If you are, and I can see it's obvious, I'll just say done. So we'll have a record of what's going along.
Okay.
There is a chat capability which you probably know about.
Yeah.
For me, presenting, it all gets a bit too busy if people start using chat as well. So I encourage a question through the Q&A, but encourage people to use the chat to speak to me or other people.
So where, sorry, can you just...
Well, you find
where, I can see the Q&A button, but where will it show?
Well, if you push the button, if you push it, you should find you get at the moment, you'll get a blank screen.
Okay.
Oh, well, I say
and
get
it'll
blank.
have numbers in there, won't there? It'll have numbers in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
All righty.
Okay, you're happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Andrew Carpenter is online. He will do an introduction to you.
Okay.
But before he does it, I'll just give a bit of a quick Zoom overview to the people who haven't had the pleasure of using Zoom before. Well, a lot of people are using it now. So
mainly for pub quizzes, I think, on Saturday night, I think.
Well, I mean, it's incredible what you could do with it. I mean, did you see the One Night Live thing that the comedians did, and then they did the music one? I mean, some of that was very clever how they got. I mean, the one with Bocelli, because they were all in four different countries.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They did it. I know, it was amazing how they did that. So it's incredible what can be done. Okay, Andrew, we're getting near the witching hour.
Okay.
But we've got 12 in.
Okay. I think
we get another minute or two, couple of minutes?
Yeah, but it's not 12 o'clock yet, is it?
No, it's not.
I won't take it personally.
No, people do leave it very late, in all honesty, in logging in, which is why they all just pitch in very, very much at the last minute.
Well, and I think, there are less people in most businesses at the moment, so you have to do what's right for the business, don't you?
Yeah, it's growing all the time. Now we're up to 18 now, so it's growing all the time. So
I think once we get to about 24, 25, that's...
Yeah, it's growing. It's up again now. Yeah. Okay. It's just coming up. And I have to leave you to chair a meeting at 12:30. I did mention that, Howard, didn't I?
So once you've done your bit, shall I just promote you down to attendee?
Yeah, you take over from there, please. Yeah.
Yeah, that's no trouble at all. Yeah, no problem. We're up to 20, climbing. John, are you hearing me at the moment? Are you going to say anything about the upcoming events before you sign off today?
Yeah, I'll mention them, and if you could mention them again at the end.
No, I'll repeat them at the end. That's no problem at all.
What do you think? Should we make a start? Do you want to kick in and I'll carry on from you, Howard?
Yeah, that's fine. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to our next Conversation That Matters with Louise Townsend. Before we start, I'm just going to quickly go through, for people who haven't experienced Zoom before, some simple things. You will find on your screen you have a toolbar. There's two ways that we're going to use today to ask questions. You can use the question and answer menu, which means that you can tap questions in. If you would like to ask a question personally, I'm going to ask people from time to time if they'd like to put their hands up. That means I can open both your microphone and indeed your camera and bring you in so that we can have some live interaction. You will find there is a hands up button. It's there for you to use. You can use it at any time. So if you have a problem, we have Amrit who's using it now. He's taken it down, so he was just testing it out. And we have also a chat button. I will probably try and do some chat with you as we go along, but you can speak to anyone that you know who's there through the chat button. I would ask if you could try not to ask the questions through the chat button and keep those to Q&A, because Louise has said she'll answer Q&A as we go along. So if everyone's quite happy, I'm now going to hand over to Andrew Carpenter, and I'll be with you throughout the session. Many thanks.
Thank you, Howard. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the next in our series of webinars. Just to explain for those of you that maybe are here for the first time, Before Easter, Constructing Excellence Southwest, Constructing Excellence Midlands and the Structural Timber Association were producing webinars very successfully. All the members were delighted with the content. So after Easter, we decided to come together, also in association with Constructing Excellence Wales and the Housing Forum, to present these webinars on a Tuesday and a Friday at midday. Initially, the topics that we were choosing were all coronavirus related, but we have decided now to widen the agenda, and I'm delighted that Louise Townsend is here today to deliver the webinar. I had the privilege of attending a presentation that Louise gave for the Constructing Excellence Midlands Leadership Council, probably nearly 12 months ago now, Louise, I think it was.
I think it was September time, actually.
Okay,
so, yeah.
With time down like this,
yeah, I know.
I'm not sure what it does. But anyway, I was really impressed with what you had to say, Louise, and I thought the content deserved a wider audience. So when we were putting these webinars together in terms of expanding the topics, I thought it was appropriate to ask you. In fact, you were one of the first names that we thought about. The social value agenda item is fast growing in terms of its priority in the UK. And I would suggest that coming out of the coronavirus pandemic, it will play even more of an important role in what we do. I think we all accept, don't we, that actually we don't want to come out of this pandemic with business as usual. We don't want to return to what was the norm. We want to ensure that zero carbon and fair payments and quality and people management are things that are at the centre of what we do. And I have to say that I think what Louise is about to present will play an increasing important part in our businesses going forward. So I have an apology to make in that I have to leave you at 12:30 to chair a CE Midlands quality meeting. But I would like to thank Howard and John for setting this meeting up. I would like to thank Louise for delivering it. And just before I sign off, the next webinar this Friday is going to be delivered by Paul Chatwin of Cundles, and that's going to be on a zero carbon saving the planet basis. And that evening, we're going to have a bit of fun. All our subject matters have been business orientated, but on Friday evening at 7, we're having a social. I've got Boris Johnson coming along to answer questions. A bit tongue in cheek. You'll probably realise it's not really Boris, but it is the #1 UK Boris impersonator. So bring a glass of wine at 7 o'clock on Friday and sit down for an hour, and we're going to run it like we do a government 5 o'clock briefing, where I'll start by asking you a few questions and then we're going to open it up to you guys. So that's something to look forward to Friday evening at the end of the week. But right now, sit back and enjoy Louise's presentation, and thank you very much.
Okay. Hi. Can everybody hear me?
Hands up.
Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
If you can hear me,
Yeah.
Howard, I'll assume that everybody else can. That's good.
Yeah, hands are going up. That's super.
Good. Hi everyone. Strange times, isn't it? It's quite weird to be wearing a gilet and a rugby shirt to work. Anyway, so Howard has built me up to something extraordinary, and I will attempt to fulfill his dreams. One thing I will say is that I sometimes get so involved in the slides that I may miss the Q&A. It's not because I'm ignoring you, it's because I haven't noticed it. So maybe Howard, you could ask the question on behalf of the person.
I'll be reminding you.
If I miss it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got some slides that I just wanted to share with you. So I'm just going to do that, attempt to. It's very strange, isn't it, doing this? Because normally when you're in a room with people, you see body language and you hear shuffling of feet and things like that, and there's stony silence for me, so bear with me. So as I say, my name is Louise Townsend. I'm Head of Social Value and Sustainability for Morgan Sindall. And we tend to badge everything from a social value viewpoint as at beyond cost, because it means that that represents that our business is going beyond the cost of what we do to looking at the value of what we deliver. Howard, can't seem to move my slides. Okay, so brief agenda, evolution of the Social Value Act, the operating environment that we're working in, a proposed framework for social value and procurement from the government, which is an evolution from, I think, when I presented for Andrew previously. And then I'm just going to give some industry context around what social value is, and then tell you what Morgan Sindall's strategy is, and then finally what the purpose of valuation, which will become more clear as we go through the presentation. So I guess everybody now has heard about the Public Services Social Value Act 2012. The evolution of that was in, I think I was laying on a beach in Greece actually on 26th of June 2018 when it came through on Construction News that David Lidington, who at the time was the Minister for Cabinet Office, stood up and said that actually it was no longer going to be a consideration in public sector procurement, but it was going to be a requirement. And that changed my holiday actually, because it meant that the phones were ringing. The reason why they have the Social Value Act are all on the screen in front of you really. So poor procurement, climate change, climate emergency, I would say, rather than climate change. Over 400 local authorities have declared a climate emergency in the UK, and that doesn't include regulated bodies and other public sector procurers. Industry failure is another reason why they're looking at why the Social Value Act was important. And then human displacement because of environmental inequality, economic inequality and social inequality. So people moving globally and inside country borders is creating huge social pressure for local authorities. And then finally, and possibly in some ways the most troubling, the social problems in the UK, particularly with youth disenfranchisement, which is kind of the youth disenfranchisement piece is driven by all of the above. So I don't know whether any of you have got children. I've got two 20-something children that are just coming out of university, and there's a part of them that feel like, you know, what's the point? Because the world is going to end, or this or that or the other. And actually that youth disenfranchisement piece for local government is one of the biggest problems. So moving on to the operating environment that we find ourselves in. I've talked about the Social Value Act in England. That only applies to England. And in Scotland and Wales, we have their national equivalents. In Scotland, it is the Procurement Reform Act. And in Wales, it is the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And they all basically say the same thing, but not to be partisan about it. The HM Treasury Green Book is the way that in central government, when they are making investment decisions, they refer to something which is called the Green Book, which is basically their guidance that they have on appraisal and evaluation of investment decisions. And the Social Value Act played a big part in the evolution of that Green Book. So previously, previous to the Green Book, they wouldn't have considered social, economic and environmental well-being as part of an investment decision-making process, whereas now they do. And obviously those are just the things that we're concerned about inside the UK, but as far as the world is concerned, we've got the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There's a rake of stuff on the internet. If you haven't seen them, I'm sure you do know all about them, but in case you don't, they're fairly complex because they're interdependent. You can't claim really just to support the ones that suit you, because they'll all have a, if you say that you're going to respond just to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, say 8 through to 10, then you will find that you're also feeding into some of the other goals too. So it's a fairly complex process to decide which ones are relevant to your business. But that's the sort of the global environment in which we're operating. Suddenly the light is being shone on how we're behaving as individuals and as companies and as countries. At the kind of in response to David Lidington's presentation in 2018, Cabinet Office decided that they wanted to have a consultation so that they could create a procurement framework for government procurement. That happened through all of last year, really. And I think if we weren't in the situation that we're in now, you would possibly be already on the receiving end of that procurement framework. But I think because of COVID-19, obviously, things like this have been pushed to one side temporarily. Having said that, I am doing some training with 3,000. I'm not training all 3,000 of them, but I'm part of a panel of people that is supporting Cabinet Office with training public sector commissioners and procurers in how to procure for social value as well as for time and cost. So the principles of the social value framework in government procurement is that there will be a minimum of 10% weighting to social value, and that is a very clear minimum. For those of you who were involved, particularly in some of the big regional frameworks and some of the big central government procurements through people like Highways England and HS2, the requirement is already way beyond 10%. But it's good news that actually, you know, it's explicitly part of their procurement strategy now. They're currently putting together recommendations for public sector procurers on questions and evidence that they should be putting into procurement activity, and they've taken advice and counsel from the industry that provides those services. So they're hopefully, you know, I've seen them and I think they're coherent and very relevant to service providers, to central and regional and local government. So in terms of the construction industry, I think maybe 6 months ago when I presented this, it was really straightforward. You know, it was less straightforward because social value was perhaps less talked about. Where now, I think people are more familiar with the term and have got a greater understanding of where it sits in the industry. But so for the purposes of this exercise, this is how Morgan Sindall defines social value. So and the definition really makes it clear that it's because of our construction activities that we deliver these things. It's not additionality. It's not something that we scrape off the bottom line and put into a charitable foundation. It's actually that we are changing our processes and our procedures so that we are delivering a different kind of output as well as the construction activity. So I hope that's a clear definition for everyone. And then going down to a bit more granular detail, social value in construction looks more like this. This isn't an exhaustive list, but for the purposes of actually presenting the social value strategy internally about 18 months ago, I decided, or 3 years ago now, probably actually, how time flies. I wanted to make it accessible to our team so that they understood that it wasn't another dark art in the construction industry. It was something that we all do every day. And all we're doing is shining a light on those activities and adjusting our processes to improve or diminish depending on what the KPI is. So hopefully you're all familiar with all of the things that are on that screen. None of it is anything really mind-blowing or unfamiliar to you. So and this is just a bit of a snapshot of the evolution of social value. It's quite a big story here. This is the Morgan Sindall story rather than the social value story, but I think, you know, you could argue that social value actually started before the Social Value Act with the Considerate Constructor scheme in 2008. So, you know, we started on this journey more than 10 years ago. And then in 2012, and then again in 2018, the Public Services Social Value Act came into being. From a Morgan Sindall viewpoint, in 2015, we created a social value policy, and that coincided with us starting to report to the Global Reporting Initiative, which requires much greater levels of transparency than most companies would be used to. And then in 2017, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals were launched, and mental health became quite a big thing for the industry, didn't it? And then in 2018, as I say, David Liddington stood up and interrupted my holiday, and it's been full speed ahead ever since, really. So I hope that's helpful. So this is what the Morgan Sindall social value strategy looks like or includes. We have a social value charter, which is basically a menu of options that the customer wants to select from when they're setting out on a project with us. And the purpose of that is actually then that it becomes embedded into project delivery rather than being something that's added on, and at the 11th hour everybody forgets about the social value outputs and we all panic. It actually is, so it's been very successful in making it actually part of our project delivery. And that the social value charter really just sets the ambition for the project, and we do that collaboratively with the client. We take those ambitions and we embed them into something that we call our responsible procurement framework, which is the way that we procure our subcontractors and our suppliers. I suppose the easiest way to describe it is that if you give a broad brush social value requirement to all of your subcontractors, they're not going to be relevant and proportionate to all of them. So a good example might be if we were procuring 1 million cube of concrete to pour, we probably wouldn't or shouldn't be asking them how many apprentices they're going to deliver to that project, but we should probably be asking them about things like their carbon, their traffic management, their water usage, their air quality, the things that are actually relevant to the project, to the service or project product that they're delivering to us. So the responsible procurement framework really becomes the input of all of the ambitions into the project. The reason why we felt it was really important to have something that explicitly made social value a requirement for our subcontractors and suppliers is because they're pretty much most of what we do at site level. So if we're making promises to our customers, then it's surely right that we should be sharing those promises through the procurement activity with our suppliers, so that we are confident then that we can deliver what the customer wants. And the final part of the strategy, there's a lot more to our strategy, but this is kind of these are the key features of it. The final part is something called the Social Value Bank, which basically provides a monetized value of social value outputs. And I'm sure you know that phrase is quite familiar to a lot of people that are listening, because there's numerous tools, there's several tools in the market now that do the same thing. We elected to create one of our own because it's not one of our own because it's now being sold to other contractors, but one that we wanted it to be able to stand up to scrutiny, and that the economics that sit within the monetization tool would stand up to rigor, so that if you were talking to a public sector customer about the amount of monetary value that you had created in social value, that it would actually build on their original investment case. I guess people know that, you know, when investment decisions are made, they have to go through a process to see how much value to society is going to be created through that investment over a period of time once the project is actually delivered. And through Morgan Sindall's Social Value Bank, you can build on that cost benefit ratio, because it uses the same valuation methodology as the Green Book that I was talking about previously. The final part of the strategy is perfect delivery, which is our it's kind of our performance management process that we use at site level. And because social value is now part of perfect delivery, it means that we're monitoring our progress against the social value charter ambitions throughout the life of the project, so that we make sure that we're not dropping any balls. And what is the purpose of monetary evaluation? Four key things really. I think, you know, we're all in the construction industry, and I don't know about you, but I get sick sometimes of people saying, you know, that we don't, you know, we're a bit rubbish, and we're noisy, and we're messy, and we're dirty, and we work on sociable hours, and you know, and actually the construction industry is one of the biggest contributors to the UK economy. It's a very inclusive industry. It's accessible to people. The career opportunities are amazing, and the value that we deliver as a temporary anchor in the communities where we operate is immeasurable, or previously was immeasurable. So it's really important that we can shine light on the value that we add to the communities where we work. I think the second thing for Morgan Sindall is that when we launched the strategy, people were firstly resistant, and then suddenly realised, actually, my job is more than counting beans or doing this or doing that. I'm actually making a contribution to something bigger than the job that I do. And it's created an enormous sense of pride across the whole of the business, really, that we feel like, you know, the individuals feel like their job is making a contribution to something greater than they believed was possible. The other reason for, or the other value in monetary evaluation is that it kind of shines a light on the morals and ethics of the organisation. So through using the Morgan Sindall social, or the social value bank, it's not the Morgan Sindall social value bank, the social value bank kind of puts a values to morals and ethics in the processes and procedures that are adopted. So it's bizarre that you can put a monetary value to the ethics of an organisation, but that's kind of where the Green Book sits. So it felt like we should be doing the same thing. And I think the final piece, which I hope everybody is in tune with, is that it starts to change the conversation away from price and moves towards a value conversation, because we all know what it's like when it's a race to the bottom, and it doesn't help anybody. So being able to demonstrate that actually the value of the processes and the procedures and the operation that you carry out actually has a value to society rather than just a cost to society is really important for the industry. And that's kind of articulated here, really. So the top half of the screen is Southampton Solent University, which is a design and build project that Morgan Sindall completed towards the end of last year. The construction cost was 22 million. And by running it through the social value bank, the value to society, and the definition of society is government, individuals, businesses, and the environment. So the value to society in the delivery of that project was 17 million. So there's an argument to say that the project has almost paid for itself by the time it's finished. The bottom half of the screen is sort of the way that we could get judged, or the way that we could get viewed in the future. So if you've got two contractors who are bidding for the same project, then, you know, there's an argument to say that the procurer or the commissioner would maybe be looking at contractor A because they're able to deliver more social value per £1 million than contractor B. So it's enabling procurement based on value as well as cost, really, in the long term. That's the valuation principles. It was a little bit about economics, really. I'll skip over that slide. If anybody wants to go back to it, please just shout. So that's me. Thanks for your time. I don't know whether anybody has got any questions.
Thanks very much.
Is everybody still there?
Yes.
It's really odd
yes.
not being able to hear anybody.
It is very odd. Yeah, we have 27 people other than you and I. So I'm now going to ask for a show of hands, and I'm going to bring people in. So I want to get this going as a conversation where we can see people's faces and that sort of thing. So
Sounds great.
as I open it up to people, you will have control of your microphone. All I would say is, when you want to speak, open it up, and when you finish speaking, close it down. It just cuts down background noise to people. So who would like to put their hand up and get involved in asking a question and generally in the conversation? So put your hands up and I will bring you in. Come on, let's get going. Don't worry, I can always ask questions and get people involved. So the question I have is simply, I'm very interested from the point that I head up the wellbeing and health group for Construction Excellence Southwest. So when we're looking at contracts, etc., how do you measure things like well-being in terms of weighing up whether employees are getting social value out of their contribution?
This is a question to me.
Yes.
Okay, so the
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine. The wellbeing valuations were drawn from the social value back from the HM Treasury Green Book, which is, it's open source, it's available to everybody, and there are very clear guidelines on how you can how you can value well-being, and it's economic, social, environmental, and government well-being. So those principles were mapped to our activities, and from that then we created the metrics that said, well, okay, if you do it in this way, then it's going to create less well-being than if you do it this way. One of the things that we're looking at the moment is things like sharing things like our employee assistance program with our supply chain, with people who are working on our sites that aren't directly employed, because that will create additional well-being on our sites. So it's fairly straightforward stuff, but the economics that sits behind it is way up here somewhere above my head. Huge algorithms that just don't mean very much to me. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it does. I'm really interested because the construction industry is one sector that certainly has been asked to go back to work. I don't know how many people who work in the sector feel comfortable going back to work, because we have mixed views on whether this is just something that we've peaked and it'll go away, or whether in fact it's going to come back. So in terms of responsibility for employees under your sort of duty of care, I wonder where this all sits. So if you force a person back to work and then they get COVID-19, where does an organisation sit?
Okay, I didn't know that it was we were going to have it with social value type questions. Well, certainly from Morgan Sindall's viewpoint, nobody has been forced to go to work.
Yeah.
So
if they say they won't go back to work, you respect their wishes not to go back to work.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how widespread this is across the construction sector, and so please, if people can give me some feedback on this at the same time, I'd be really interested. So please do show of hands. We have one question that's come through Q&A, no two. So I'll read them out. Is your social value policy helping you to deal with COVID-19? That's a question.
Oh my goodness. I would say no. I think when you read the detail of the social value policy, it doesn't deal with force majeure type circumstances. It's more about our policies and it's more about our processes and procedures. So I think it it's not designed to be a business continuity type of policy. So I think no, probably not. I mean, there are, you know, interestingly, actually, I'm saying no, and then I'm thinking, well, actually, but we are doing some amazing things virtually. You know, we've got virtual Meet the Buyer programs going on. We've got virtual work experience, virtual, you know, all sorts of things that we're doing virtually to support the stakeholders that we would ordinarily support in the communities, and who are identified in the policy. So, you know, it's not explicit, but yes, I guess, you know, the social value policy is helping to combat some of the distancing that's been created by COVID-19, but it's not explicit.
Okay, well, we can come back. That was an anonymous question. We've got another one here that's come up, is how have you engaged your supply chain in embracing your social value policy?
Oh, okay, that's a good one. So we, through the responsible procurement framework, largely, because social value forms part of our procurement activity now, very explicitly, rather than just as a part of the tender meeting, if you like. You know, it's more than just a conversation. They're expected to answer questions on social value. And what the responsible procurement framework does, it identifies the skills gap or the knowledge gap, and it doesn't obviate that supply chain partner from being part of the project. It just means that we need to upskill them so that they understand what we've agreed we're going to deliver. And we've got some, you know, we've got some really great case studies where we, through applying the responsible procurement framework to procurement activity, we've been able to identify that perhaps people don't understand about equality, diversity and inclusion. So we've put them on some courses to upskill them in that area, and we've helped them with, you know, EDI strategies in their own business, that kind of thing. And we use the supply chain school quite a lot for the social value upskilling piece. So they have to provide us with a certificate to say, you know, maybe if they scored 3 out of 10 on the social value part of the subcontract tender, and we needed them to score 7, then we'll send them away and ask them if they will complete the certain modules within the supply chain sustainability school and give us the certificate to demonstrate that they've done it. So so the responsible procurement framework is actually helping the supply chain to help us, to help them, to help our customers, if you like.
Okay, thank you for that. Rob Lamb had his hand up, so I've actually opened your ability. Yeah, so we can actually get a face up here, and Rob, you can actually ask a question, because I can tell you it does get rather lonely up here. So, Rob, please carry on.
Thanks, Howard. Hi, Louise.
Hi.
My experience of public sector and their kind of assessment of best value and social value and all of the stuff that is obligated they take account of when they're doing their procurement exercises is a bit patchy. I mean, generally, some project teams will take serious account of social value in their assessment of bidders, and many others will give it lip service. I'm just interested in your experience of that over the last few years, and particularly now with the conditions that we're in, going forward with the public sector spend as it inevitably will be challenged. Your thoughts on, you know, how seriously social value and best value procurement will be taken into account.
Okay, where are you from, by the way?
Previously Wilmot Dixon, which is why I was heavily involved in a lot of stuff that you do.
I recognised your name.
But with a small business now that's focused on domestic, so new build housing, retrofit using off-site timber.
Right, okay. It's quite an interesting dynamic actually, isn't it? Because when, you know, we talked previously about the climate emergency, and I think there's going to be some real commercial and ethical tension around what's going to be required. And I think against the backdrop that actually, you know, the cynics amongst us would say that the Social Value Act was designed to plug the gap that austerity left. I think, you know, it will go extremely one of two ways. It will either go in the direction that, you know, we're back to basics 1980s style, you know, really hard-nosed, race to the bottom construction procurement, or it will go completely the opposite way. And I think if local government takes the lead from central government, then it will probably go in favour of social value being more important than it has been previously. You know, that's my view. And maybe it's my emotional view, because I want that to happen, because I don't see, you know, one of the things that that I think social value can very ably help to solve is part of the climate emergency, because, you know, if we focus on localism and social value locally, then actually we will naturally be reducing our scope 3 carbon emissions, which will make a huge impact, have a massive impact on the sustainability, certainly of the embodied carbon of the building. So I would like to think that it will go, you know, that it will get increased focus beyond COVID-19 rather than massively reduced. What's your view?
I'd agree. I think it's very unclear, uncertain, as it has always been, and I think we'll have to wait and see. But I would hope and maybe anticipate that it may be as you described, which is more likely that this is taken account of going forward. But I do think that from a Structural Timber Association point of view and off-site manufacture, there's a very strong message, as you say, about the impacts on resource efficiency, carbon reduction, and the impact that has on the environmental and other social impacts as well. So I think something that the members of STA can certainly benefit from is the focus on social value in the wider sense in terms of the environmental impacts as well. So yeah, I think there's every need for us to focus on how we project and present what we offer as a sector.
Definitely. Glad we're in the same place.
Louise.
Thanks, Rob. We've got a question now from Graham. Well, I'm not very good at this.
Fulgacia.
Yes, I've opened your ability to actually come on screen and answer this question live if you'd like, Graham. So I'll wait to see if you join us. If not, I'll read it out. But would you like to join us? Yes, coming online. Yes, there we go.
Oh.
Hiya.
Hi.
This is so much nicer seeing faces.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll keep it going if I can get people to do it.
Yeah, no, it's just as a small timber frame manufacturer, it's how do you get involved in, you know, as maybe a local person for localism, how would you even be aware of a project? How are you ever going to get on to do a bid, you know, tender for a project? And how do you, for want of a better word, stop to like to the big nationals just getting in on jobs? And you know, because they've got experience, they've got all the ability to prove, you know, as a small business, you haven't got the resources to and time to develop lots of information and get into these types of things.
Yeah, and it is a challenge. I'm sure Roger would support it. You know, it's a huge challenge to not miss the value that could be offered by local companies. And I guess, you know, certainly from a Morgan Sindall point of view, I don't know whether you're part of our supply chain, but, you know, it would be great to have you as part of the supply chain. So pick up with me separately if you're not. So I
mean, we have part of the reason why I came on this is because we have actually done a job with Morgan Sindall, so we're a bit of a success story in that regard.
Yeah.
We did these goals in Liverpool.
Right. You're not Sticks, are you?
Sticks, yes.
Right. Okay.
So we did do that. We haven't had anything since, and that seems to be very specific to Liverpool schools, which, you know, we were brought on for, and it was great for us. Really enjoyed it. It's how would we continue?
How you build that capacity?
And get on to anything else, any other projects. I mean, I think Morgan Sindall are probably someone who very much would look at traditional methods of construction. How does someone even look at it and look at the opportunities and say, well, that could be timber, or that element could be timber, or, you know, how are those decisions getting done that could, specific to the STA in terms of their members getting onto these jobs, basically. Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, it's maybe a conversation to pick up separately with the STA, because there must be a way of scaling accessibility to the pipeline of opportunities that we've got nationally. You know, but aside from that, it's about local networking really, and meet the buyer events, and you know, the find it in type mechanisms. You know, but I don't know whether Andrew or somebody from the STA has had conversations previously with our group head of procurement, but certainly Simon Arnott would be happy to you know, to have a conversation with the STA about how we can make supply chain opportunity available to local business, you know, to local businesses, because that's where it's going to be.
Yeah,
you know, we need that.
Really worked for us.
Yeah,
it really worked for us.
Yeah,
it'd be great. I'm a big believer in the entire industry getting the benefit, as in the more timber frame we can get out there, the more timber buildings we can use. You know, it doesn't have to be us. You know, as in, it just, I can just see it's hard to get onto that. We were, I think, very lucky, and it was through a series of lucky engagements that we managed to get onto those projects. And so
well, and you know, and also I remember the framework. You know, there was a very clear and precise requirement from the procurer that I think it was 80% of the spend had to be with a certain postcode.
That's right.
I think it was 80%. So, you know, that's very helpful for local businesses, you know, and it's very smart procurement on behalf of the procurer, because they're making sure that they're keeping the money where they want it. You know, and everybody knows the construction industry is agile if it needs to be. Sometimes it needs a push in the right direction, but you know, I think so it's a blend of, you know, making sure that the procurement people are procuring usefully, and you know, I don't know how that engagement between small companies and the local authority that looks after the area where they operate, you know, maybe there's a conversation to be had around that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard. It was at a recent event, RIBA North and Liverpool City Council there, and just talked about how they wanted to promote timber, and I thought, well, we're sitting there as a timber. There's hardly a timber frame job, but they don't in any way try and promote the use of timber in reality.
Yeah.
You know, it's just everything's just going up, steel, concrete, whatever. It's just not. There's no, you know, there's no drive for that. But that's a separate conversation, I guess, entirely.
Yeah, Howard. Howard, could you either give me Graham's email or give Graham my email, and I can pick up with him separately, because there is some stuff happening that I could talk about in a bit more detail offline.
Yep, I can certainly do that. No problem at all. So I've got another question here from Sarah Barnes. I've opened Sarah's camera ability and mic ability if she'd like to ask the question live. As you can gather, it's quite nice if people are prepared to join in and be seen. So are you happy to do that, Sarah? She's not opening her microphone and camera, so I'll ask the question for her. For SMEs, how do you suggest getting the necessary buy-in and support from employees and supply chain?
For SMEs, can you say the question again?
Yes, for SMEs, how do you suggest getting the necessary buy-in and support from employees and supply chain?
Buy-in regarding social value?
I would suspect so, yes. It doesn't actually say, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, it kind of speaks for itself, really. You know, increasingly, certainly for Morgan Sindall, you know, I think the biggest social value award in tender terms was 40% last year. So it was 40% of the quality score, which kind of speaks for itself, really. And, you know, I think I think there's a number of things happening. You know, I think the next generation of talent is coming through, and they've got a different attitude towards, you know, the purpose of an organisation. So that's starting to make a difference. And I think certainly for Morgan Sindall, perfect delivery actually has a financial incentive to it. So, you know, that's quite smart, because it means that actually by making social value part of the perfect delivery requirement, they, you know, the incentive will be impacted by the project's team's ability or willingness to deliver the social value ambitions. So for Morgan Sindall, it's only tiny, but there is a financial incentive. I think it's about, you know, employees and subcontractors ensuring that they stay relevant to the society that they, or the stakeholders that they're serving. And I appreciate completely, well, I think I may appreciate where Sarah's questions come from. But I think, you know, the dissenters are getting fewer and fewer, and it's a big part of our conversation almost on a daily basis in Morgan Sindall now. So, you know, it's 3 years ago, I would have said something very different, but it's now a significant part of our business. Coupled with the fact, you know, it did help enormously when John Morgan announced to the city that social value was one of the 4 things that would make Morgan Sindall resilient and give us, you know, a sustainable future. So certainly for our employees, as soon as you get the chief executive standing up and saying that to our shareholders, it's you can't give a much clearer message than that actually this is really important. We have things like we have social value. We have part of our appraisal process is around social value and the functional. So if I was a QS, what could I do in social value as part of my job? So we have targets in our appraisal system. There's a number of mechanisms that we use to engage our own employees. And then, as I say, the responsible procurement framework really nails it as far as our subcontractors are concerned. And I think the RPF, responsible procurement framework, was actually really useful and helpful to the subcontractors, because rather than us saying we just want you to provide 1,000 bricks, we're now saying we want you to provide 1,000 bricks and an apprentice. So actually we're enabling them to price for that if they need to. You know, it may be that the apprentice is part of their overhead anyway. So but we're being transparent and honest with them about actually what the requirement is, rather than not telling them till the deal is done and then it's too late. Does that help?
I suspect that may be a very good answer.
Sarah needs to just put in the Q&A box, yes, thanks, nailed it.
She probably will. I've got a number of questions, but a couple linked here. I've got John Gill. I've opened his ability to come and speak because John has got a question about calculators, but I've also got another question here. Anonymous, from an SME perspective, what tools are there out there to help us understand the science/maths behind some of this? Are there good online resources? But I think I'm going to couple that with John Gills. So John, are you happy to join in the conversation and we link these 2 questions together?
Yeah, of course.
Yep, yeah, there we go.
I'm here.
John, I was kind of expecting your voice to be voiceover. Do you know, like when they interview somebody who wants to remain anonymous, because the light behind you, all I can see is the shape of your head.
I moved my camera because you ain't seeing the rest of the room. So I apologise for the darkness. Yeah, so I've been developing some social value calculators and some initiatives and incentives at Hochtief, which is where I work. There's a number of different organizations doing things, and obviously the danger with this and all sorts of other initiatives is once it starts diversifying, it's quite hard to check that things are comparable. So there's the social value portal, which is what local authorities and a lot of clients seem to use. Which is a calculator in pounds and pence for all the things that we do.
Yeah.
And there's Considerate Constructors have Building Social Value.
Yeah.
As another one, and Supply Chain School, which I think that's the other part of the question. Supply Chain School has a lot of resources freely available on their website, which give up some really good training on what we can do in social value. So if your other viewers want to find some resources, I would recommend Supply Chain School for certain.
It's the Supply Chain School resource is being refreshed at the moment, isn't it? Some of it's quite dated.
Yeah.
So,
but really the question I had was, how can we ensure that when we're claiming social value, we're not using too many different calculators to come up with?
Yeah, and it's a problem, isn't it? It is a problem. You know, because and that was, to be honest, that was part of the reason why we decided, or we elected to invest in our own, because the other tools that are in the market use things like, you know, they will use a very bland proxy that actually there's no point claiming a value unless it's based on some kind of real economics. Why, you know, why would it be £1 rather than £100? So that was why we went on that journey and made the investment, because we thought if we are going to stake a claim to a monetised social value, then we want it to stand up to rigour. You know, we want government to recognise the valuation methodology that we've used to create that monetary value. And I am completely with you that, you know, we're comparing apples with pears at the moment. And, you know, we use the social value portal as well because our customers use it. But the social value bank will routinely not deliver the same number as the social value portal because it doesn't, you know, because the valuation methodology is different. I don't know what valuation methodology they use, but I don't think it's HM Treasury Green Book. And, you know, there's several other tools in the market that do similar things. So, you know, and I'm sure if we ran the same project through four different tools, they would all deliver a different number. So that's not helpful to anybody. And actually, I would welcome either the local government association or central government coming out and saying, you know, this is our preferred weapon of choice, because actually then you could move in earnest with the social value monetisation agenda, because it is important. You know, it is really important that actually the value that an organisation creates in the delivery of a project can make a huge difference to local communities. And actually, if you can put a value to that, then that will start to make the economic, you know, the national economics of the country start to work better, because you're not, I was going to swear then, you're not throwing money away. You know, you're actually investing in something that actually has makes a tangible difference to local communities. So so I'm with you completely. And I think we're at the beginning of that monetisation journey. I know, you know, the Social Value Bank is going through validation at the moment with HM Treasury, but they've got other things, they've got other fish to fry at the moment. So who knows? You know,
they're all going to be very busy dealing with the current thing before getting back onto this one. One of the things I found really interesting was how much social value we were already doing, and not really having a way of rewarding the people that are doing it. So I think if we can say at Christmas, look, you earned £1 million worth of social value from what you've done on your project, here's some of it back so you can do some more. I think it's something that people really buy into.
Yeah, I think, you know, from an employee sort of well-being and retention viewpoint, it's a really powerful tool, because I think, you know, that slide where I talked about, you know, the impact that it's had on our employees has been so positive, because you just feel like you put part of bigger than something, you know, you're part of something bigger than yourself. And it just has, everybody sort of grows about 3 inches when we start talking about the social impact that we've had. So, you know, I think it's a great thing to focus on from an employee engagement viewpoint as well. Okay. Howard, did that answer the question that wasn't spoken?
Well, if he wants to come back with it, but I think he probably has. I've got really 3 questions left and an invite, really. So I'll give you the invite first. The answer is,
I can't go anywhere.
Why aren't you represented on Construction Excellence, Southwest Procurement and Productivity Theme Group? We are currently developing a guide to outcome-led procurement from a main contractor's perspective. So shall I ask Martin Jones to write to you and invite you to join?
Yes, if you like. Yeah, that would be good.
Okay, I will do that. Next one I have is simple. It's a statement. Surely the relationship and trust that you have built with your suppliers are now helping you to deal with COVID-19.
I can't answer that question, only because I can't. I'm too far removed from what's happening day to day on our sites to know whether that is true or not. I would guess that it's probably a yes, but it would be a Louise Townsend guess rather than a Morgan Sindall statement.
Okay, thanks very much. The next one we got, what sort of supplier development do you undertake to raise the performance of your key suppliers?
What sort of
supplier development do you undertake to raise the performance of your key suppliers?
Okay, so we do one-to-one coaching with them. We use the Supply Chain Sustainability School, and it all starts with the assessment really through the RPF, because we don't want to be teaching some people to suck eggs, and we don't want to be making others try to understand concepts that are too complicated for them. So the RPF is really important for us in identifying actually what the gap in skill is, and then from there we will work with that subcontractor to upskill them basically. And it's it might be one-to-one mentoring, it might be just being part of a bigger group of people where we're doing workshopping different things. It might just be hands-on, come and get stuck in and help us with it. But I would say the Supply Chain Sustainability School is probably the biggest part of that. The only area that I would highlight that's different is with the diversity and inclusion piece, because that's very complex in its nature. And we have a supplier diversity toolkit which we share with our suppliers so that they can self-assess their maturity in the inclusion journey, and then there's a self-help guide on how they can, different resources that there are available online and through industry associations, etc., so that they can upskill themselves. But we're always here, we're always here to help all of our subcontractors and suppliers, because without them we're bugger all basically. So we want them to be as good as they can be.
Okay, so I think that answers that question. And this sort of begs coming to the next one, because as an SME, how can we compete with large contractors such as Morgan Sindall when bidding if we don't have tools such as the social value bank in place and or dedicated resources to support the delivery of social value?
Is that coming from another tier one
Well,
contractor?
it's an anonymous attendee, so I have no idea.
Right. Okay. Well, there are resources available in the industry. There's a stack of stuff on the Supply Chain Sustainability School. The Social Value Bank is not just for Morgan Sindall. Anybody can buy a license to it, and it's scaled. The cost of that is scaled to the size of the organisation. So it's accessible. It's not something that we develop because we want to be different to everybody else. We developed it because we want the whole of the industry to be measured in the same way, and that refers back to the question that John was talking about earlier, really. I think in terms of having dedicated resource, the majority of, so we have 500 projects on site pretty much at any one time, and we've got a resource of something like 20 people across the whole of the group that focus solely on social value. So it's, some people may say that that's a real luxury, but actually the majority of the social value that we deliver is delivered by the teams. So I think if you've got a strategy, which I'd be happy to help anybody with a strategy if they want to do that, I think if you've got a strategy that is embedded in your operation, then it shouldn't require dedicated resource social value, really, is my view.
Okay, we've just stepped over time, so I think what we'll do is we thank you very much for your time today and to answering quite a lot of questions.
No problem.
Oh, would you mind if I ask just one quick question of Louise?
Well, yes, make it quick.
It's a quick one. Is there, in your view, Louise, a potential conflict between the drive for off-site manufacture and the way social value is calculated in terms of local employment and local labour?
Potentially, yes. Depends
So
where
is
you're
that
buying your
something that
offsite
you're
from, doesn't
looking
it?
at?
Yeah, potentially yes. But I think, you know, there's carbon and efficiency trade-offs with that will partially. I mean, you know, but you're creating a benefit in one place and removing the benefit from somewhere else. So there will be a trade-off. But I think potentially yes, the localism thing will get impacted potentially negatively by offsite manufacture.
And there's quite a heavy weighting, I think, towards the local employment, local spend. So maybe that's something for SDA to consider and pick up in terms of how that may be influencing procurement decisions and the value and benefit that's brought by offsite manufacturing being diluted in those kind of calculations.
But it's quite interesting, Rob, you know, that the sticks, the guys just now that we were, you know, that was talking earlier, you know, I don't know how many sort of small and medium-sized timber frame manufacturers there are nationally. I'm probably talking to the right audience to tell me exactly the number, but you know, they must be there, you know, and if they're not, then let's build capacity so that they can be there, so that we can kill both birds with one stone.
I guess it's just whether they're in the catchment area that's calculated for local employment, which is often the challenge, the regulatory area.
Yeah, that's quite interesting actually. There is maybe something that we could look at in terms of a calculation to say, well, okay, you know, they're not as local, but actually they're reducing carbon by X, which means that, you know, there probably is some sort of calculation that we could think about that would lessen the pain of the reduction in local economic impact.
Thanks, Louise. Thanks, Howard.
Okay, thanks very much once again to Louise. Just to remind you, as Andrew said at the beginning, we have an event on Friday, which is going to look at the subject of zero carbon. We have an evening with Boris, which could be a bit of fun. But on Thursday, the Somerset Constructing Excellence Club is doing a session in the afternoon. It's about designing the future, which is actually looking at the winner's mindset, lessons from sport, with two people, one who was an ex-coach at Manchester City and another one who was a Premiership referee. So please join us for those events and have a good time and look forward to seeing you in the future. Many thanks. Goodbye.
Don't know how to log off.
Oh, well, that's quite simple.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you very much for your, that's it. Very simple. So thanks very much for your time. And I'll ask Martin Jones, who is the Constructing Excellence Southwest Procurement and Supply Chain leader, to invite you along to perhaps one of their meetings or one of your colleagues if you've got too much time. So thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. The COVID-19 questions are difficult to answer because, you know, just because I'm not at the coalface of our decision-making process around what we do, you know, what our position is. So, so they were a bit of a surprise, which is why I skirted over them. But I hope
they're very current in people's minds.
Yeah. I appreciate that, but if I skirted over them and didn't answer them very well, it's because I'm probably not allowed to. So
that's okay. Thanks very much for your time, and hope to see you again in the future.
No worries. Thanks, Howard.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye.
If Jonathan Platt is still there, yes, you can listen to this again, and I will ask for the slides to be available. You just need to go to Leaders Meet website. Many thanks. Bye.